Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
But, yeah, thanks. I don't want to sit up here and talk at the mic. So, this is out with the old, in with the new. Going through some CLI, command line, just general basic habits that we all have as wonderful people. And I'm going to have some wonderful examples to show you later on. I'm Leslie. I was formerly a sysadmin, specifically for Linux, did a lot of CentOS boxes. Now I'm a pen tester. Yay! I'm in the creamy middle goodness of having experience and still learning things. I do love Vim. I don't evangelize about it. I started with Nano. It's okay. We're all people. I do love XFCE a lot. It's my favorite WM. That's me, the old man, yelling at cloud. And also LCARS is the greatest interface, and I really wish it was real. So we're going to the old tree, and I say old, this is the 1970 version. So this is starting at ENIAC and going on up, and needs to be redone, but probably shouldn't because it'd just be really scaled down. But I'm going to go through a few of the things I'm going to talk about today. It's applicable for Unix, Linux, and BSD systems. A lot of these shared tools do have overlap. I was looking at the amount of tools that are offered. Solaris itself has 29,000 applicable packages you can install for Solaris, just for Solaris. And I'm only going to go through a few examples for 64-bit architecture. I'm not going to have open work, things like that. So packages, I'm talking about applications, built-ins, utilities, but not shell built-in. So these are just pre-compiled packages. So FreeBSD, 26,000 packages. NetBSD, 13,000 packages. And Dragonfly copies NetBSDs. So, yep, you'll see 26 actually gave an amount of updated packages that they have. We're at an average of 18,000 packages for every single installation you're going to run. So you've got a lot, and you're going to have overlap. There's going to be some redundancies. Biggest thing, NetStaff and LSOF. Kind of similar, do similar things. Some people, if they go to school, they're going to learn how to do NetStat. If they go to a certain school, or they'll go to work, and someone say, hey, use LSOF. And so they'll start using LSOF. They won't think about using NetStat. LS-TAC-L to make a long list versus LL, which is a built-in in some shells. You don't see it everywhere. So a lot of what we have is tribal knowledge. Big old tribal knowledge. So we do have media. This all counts as tribal knowledge. When you're writing a book, when you're reading a book, where did you learn it from when you're writing it in the book? When you are reading it on forums, who's writing it? What are you taking into practice? And what are you pulling from it? Media and CLI basics, a lot of the times when you look at walkthroughs, they're going to tell you the what and the how, but they're not going to tell you the why. They're not going to tell you why they're using a specific tool. They're just going to say, hey, this is what I do. This is what I've done. It works for me. I'm going to keep doing it this way. And hey, here's how I do it. Come do it my way too. And that's fine. It can be good and bad. And I'm going to go into some of the reasons why it can be bad, but that's coming up. But interviews are also a really good place to tell where somebody's learned their command line usage. They will, if you ask them a question, say, hey, how would you do this? How they respond is going to give you a lot of insight into where they learned their information. So for on-the-job training classes, are your classes formal or informal? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant if they're formal or not. The content is what matters. If your tools are updated, are your commands updated? Are you running the same grep sentence to check this one file that you've been using for 5 to 10 years, meanwhile you're not using fgrep or any other extended regex grep? How often are your trainers updated? Aaron, I'm not looking at you. How often are your trainers updated? Do they keep up with their own command line skills? So overall, what are we doing on the command line? There we go. So how many people in here have used awk before? How many people in here who have used awk have used it for more than just printing columns out of a row?
get it in pattern every freaking day.
Yeah, yep. So a lot of us, we use tools only for the bare minimum of what we need for the output we want so bad. We write our command line for what we want for the output and not for taking into account what we're actually typing. So the biggest one, pipes. Pipes are everywhere. Pipes, it's the easiest thing. We can just pipe it and put it to another command and we're good to go. And then we come to some of these examples, which may be a little hard to read. We've got an inode check here using word count. We've got a huge find command in the middle there with multiple greps. We've got sorts of all types. So this is what I see a lot, and I do it too sometimes. It's how I learned. It's how I learned how commands work. If I didn't get the output I wanted, I would go back, hit up, and then modify it a little bit, try it again, go back, hit up, try it again. And so that's how we learn, right? And a lot of the times when we are going through these things that we learn, we have some things that we should really, so a lot of these were donated from friends and coworkers that I very carefully redacted out anything that was too damning. But I also did want to point out here, I don't have Windows examples. And me personally, I don't have a lot of Windows experience. And I'm okay admitting this, but one of the things a friend pointed out to me is, why isn't this more prevalent in Windows? Is it because there's lack of complexity in commands? There's just less volume of commands? I mean, we're talking about a bunch of them. There's no redirectors like you would see in Unix. So really, are pipes and redirectors causing a lot of these types of commands? So that's kind of something to think about. And if you want to come talk to me afterwards about Windows, please, I'm all ears. So, what's the big deal? What's the point? If you're trying to be silent on an engagement, if you're pen testing, sure, you can do things in memory. If you have to do something on the server, you want to be as quiet as possible. A lot of the commands that were shown previously are going to cause a lot of I/O usage, a lot of CPU usage on the server. And do we really think about that when we're pen testing? Like, how many resources is this command going to use up? Am I going to topple the box over when I run this command? You might think that, but you don't really consider it. You're going to use the tool that works because you used it every time. You're going to run the same command, you've used it every time. So a lot of these examples that we have here, especially on this one, checking for load average that goes through a bunch of pipes and killing PHP procs, you're causing part of a problem to help solve this high CPU usage script. So, yep, just checking my load average, but then also running this command over and over again for I in 1 to 800. So, we need to kind of think about what we're typing here. So, effect on the server, and you're not going to look up exploit information, or you shouldn't, on the same network that you are actually testing on. So why are you leaving a noisy footprint if you can clean it up just a little bit? So there are some tools you can use to actually check the effect of what you are running on the server. Time is a really good one if you want to see how long it takes for your command to run. It will just give you flat out time. For example, I have grep going to pipe to word count and listing, and it gives me a time, how long it takes. And you'll notice that using grep for the same thing with the C flag is slightly faster. There are slightly faster things you can do when you're typing on the command line to do exactly what you need to do. And as I mentioned earlier, there are commands that we just don't use. I love grep. It's so useful. I barely use egrep. I should. I just do the capital P flag and then just hope everything is fine. But there are lots of commands that we just don't use, don't take advantage of. And that's the good and bad thing about Unix-based systems. There's a lot to do. There's a lot given to us. we don't take advantage of it. We just do what we know works or do what people tell us works. And at that point, we're just kind of skimming. We're coasting. Top, H-top, and I/O-top. Great ways to see how many resources you're using, pardon me, on an application. And yeah, Slack. Yes, I know. So from here, you can actually nice processes. You can make them use less I/O. From here, you don't have to type nice at the command line for your command. VMstat. It's going to show you live time, CPU usage, I/O, swap usage. So what I like to do sometimes is I'll run a command and screen, and then I'll run VMstat and have it print out every second or two, just so I can see what is it doing in the back end. How much of it is this affecting my resources on the server? And finally, I love strace a lot. It's so hard to read, but I love it. It's especially great for seeing where things connect. So we have strace and dtruss and dtrace on BSD systems also works. So you're going to get a lot of output when you use this. Please pipe this to less or pipe it to a file. You will see every single system call your script does. You will see everything it has to do to get it to give you your little output, your number. So it's actually kind of nice to see, hey, I have this script. Where's it connecting to? You can just use strace. There will be a connect flag, and it'll show you the IP that it's going out to. So ultimately, we want to kind of think like an admin. And yes, admins are lazy, and I say that as a former admin, and that can be good. That's how scripts get written, is because we're lazy people. So we're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, just trying to get the output we want, but we need to think about the server. Think about the server. So go through review commands you use pretty regularly. So any type of one-liners you use just to grab system info even, or if you have something that just does enumeration right at the beginning, just check it. Make sure it's clean. Start archiving the ones you use most often. GitHub gists are a really good way to keep these. So you can just keep a gist of everything you use when you're on an engagement or things you run at home, the most common ones. And review ways to consolidate them. So I gave an example here of sort TACU versus sort pipe to unique. You're going to get the same output. The first one's going to happen a little faster and a little easier on the server. So you're actually removing some redundancies at that point too. Ask your colleagues for help. Yeah, tribal knowledge is good too. It can be bad, but it can be good. And I mean, it is what it is. It's a neutral thing. So ask people for help. Don't be afraid. For sure. I'm glad to help anybody with command line stuff. I'm not great at it, of course, but let's analyze what we type and why, and why we can do things better. So this is experience. This affects everybody. A lot of the examples I gave previously, huge age range, huge experience range. It's not just me. It's a lot of us. So, if we have scripts that we can kind of keep clean, let's just go ahead and keep it clean. Let's not keep them dirty. Clean them up. Reevaluate why you do what you do. And we have, again, thousands of overlapping commands in Unix, Linux, BSD. So once we're able to just clean up those, we can see the effect on the server and kind of think like an admin, how does it affect the server? You don't want to topple it. So be as efficient as possible. If you want. You don't have to. That's fine. But thanks, y'all. So thanks to Aaron. Oh, that guy. Nuno, who's not here. Thanks, Dave and Derbycon, and the anonymous donors who I'm not going to shame about the one-liners that they put up earlier. And I'll just put them up now. Any questions for me? Yeah.
So when you look at taking like a one-liner or a script and you start dealing with larger data sets and you look at like trying to parallelize, is that a word? But, run a whole bunch of them at once.
Yeah.
Is there anything particular you try to go through to optimize it before you go to the parallel step? Is it more like the S-trace stuff, or is it, kind of what's your kind of go-to
So
on cleaning that stuff up?
When you have to run a lot of things in parallel, the biggest thing to take in mind is that how many resources is the original command using? Before you even run it in duplicate, check on the first thing. So let's say, for example, you're doing nmap and you're just running it through a loop on all these IPs. Do you have to run all the flags that you're doing on the nmap? Can you maybe limit it to a certain amount of ports? That's going to lower I/O usage. It's going to lower time on the server. Remove anything unnecessary that you don't need. That'll help out. Yep.
Yeah, since you mentioned grep versus egrep, well, I think I should clarify first of all that a lot of people have that VI kind of what I call the VI syndrome, where they always default to whatever's going to be on every single system that they ever connect to ever, which is why everyone uses grep as an example. Because personally, I don't ever use grep. I use ACK and AG 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Until I get into a server at work, and then I immediately use grep because none of them have those commands. But I just wanted to say, like, what's your opinion on other commands that are actually a lot better than the default ones a lot of the time,
but aren't on the host systems?
But are almost never on any host system.
Yeah, it's really rough because you're not going to install it and then just have it run the program.
Right.
Like, I'm not just going to apt-get, whatever I want, and then just apt remove when I'm done, and, they'll never notice. And history tag C, just clear history, just get rid of it. No, you're not going to do that. Realistically, you have to kind of prepare for having multiple commands on different systems, and it's a harsh truth. You're not going to have everything everywhere. There are certain commands that actually distros refuse to port in. Just either they're old or they just don't work well with the kernel. And
ESP versus new or evils.
Yep, exactly. So you will have a lot of situations where you just can't use some of the tools that you're used to. And that's kind of a good thing. It takes you out of your comfort zone. You get to explore more that you haven't seen.
Also, fuck BSD find.
It's so bad. I have an opinion about it, and it's bad. BSD find is it's the blurst. It's the blurst. Anything else? Anyone else? Yep.
You mentioned, using GitHub, using resources, your peers, etc. But looking online and looking at resources, how do you validate that what you're really looking at is something that is not going to bring a system to its knees as you continue to learn? You don't. That's the problem. If you take random code from that site we shall not name and run it on your system, yeah, it's like Voldemort. You can't talk about it. You don't know what it's going to do on your server. You don't know what it's going to do in your system. If you're running as root user and you just copy something from Stack Overflow and put it in your server, you're going to have a bad time. Because you're also running it as root at that point. And that's another thing. That's a whole nother pivot. Don't run things as root. I was just noticing one of the ones from your sample, and there's sudo all over the place.
Yep. When you're an admin, you have root. In fact, we took tests so we could get root and have root access to the whole farm, and I had access to about 26,000 servers at some point. So we had to try to make sure that what we wrote wouldn't just topple all these servers. We had people calling us immediately. It would be a huge nightmare. And you can't really test it on a test server because you're not going to have users running whatever they want on that test server too. So you have to be as efficient as possible.
But I still see some of my admins that are logged in as root, and they're typing sudo. And I'm going, wait, what? What are you doing? Because I'm looking at
comment.
logs.
Here comes a comment about privilege. it's like, it's definitely it's a lot of redundancies because you're not thinking about it. Certain shells will print the working directory that you're in, and some don't, and so you just kind of have to assume where you are at that point.
Well, it makes me think they're copying and pasting from those sites that shall not be named.
Either that, or they just forget that they're root, which why would you forget that you're root on a server? Why would you forget? But, seen that? Yep.
Me?
Yeah.
Do you have a way to like keep these notes, your recommendations? Do you have a gist or a notebook, and do you ever share it?
I do have a gist. It's not populated right now. I'm kind of copying things over from Notepad. I honestly just write a text file and then edit it from there. Yes. Yes. So what I typically do is I write it in just a text file and keep it in my documents folder or on my desktop. And when I'm working on the server and I use something common, like if I do a build script just to get all my packages up to date or install things I want, I look over it every time. I say, hey, is there any way I can do this a little differently, a little more efficiently? Like how you would rewrite something in another language just to have it run a little better. And I think we were talking about Perl earlier, how writing something in Perl in a one line would be a little, I see your grimace, would be a little faster than writing it in another language. So, I mean, there is overlap there too.
So I have a question about resources, since I know you have opinions. If you have a way to do the same thing in two ways, but one is extremely, let's as an example, a big memory hog versus a big CPU hog, and I have a very specific example in mind. Specifically, if I want a unique amount of terms in a file.
Right.
And one way of doing it is sort of unique, as you said before, and the other way is you just throw it into a humongous dictionary in awk.
Yeah.
And it works about 1,000 times faster, but it uses up exactly the amount of size in the file.
And you can do that in less too.
Right.
If you do less with the / command and do search, it'll show how many results it comes up with.
Right. Well,
yeah.
it'll also give you like the unique amount of lines, right?
Right.
And that will use, like, I've done that on files as large as about 5 gigabytes. But if you look at top, memory goes from about 4 gig usage to about 10 gig usage.
Yeah.
Quickly. So would you say that is more, like, how would you compare like memory resource versus CPU resource? What is more? Do you think that one is more, tell sign of someone doing something weird on the system than the other?
It depends on the server. It really does. If you have just like a Conroe box with 2 cores, maybe 4 gigs of memory, and you're checking a 5 gig file, the I/O is actually probably going to kill the box a lot more.
Both of them are going to do that.
Yeah. Right. So I wouldn't say I would prioritize one or the other, really. It depends what resources are available on it, and you can just check those easily. Free M is something I find myself accidentally typing on BSD systems all the time. Anything else? Thank you.